Hi, I'm Beck and welcome to a video where I'm going to rank all of the books that I read in 2024, but I'm only going to rank the new books that I read in 2024. So I'm going to cut out any rereads I did and just get down to the chase. These are all of the books that I read in 2024, and I'm going to start with the 2 stars going into 3 stars, 4 stars, and then 5 stars. So worst books at the beginning, best books at the end. Let's get to this. If I've got any reviews, by the way, they will be linked down below in the description. So if you want more perspective or more insight and gossip, I guess, go and look into my description. So starting off, we've got the worst book that I read in 2024, and that is easily The Atlas Complex by Olivia Blake, which was such a disappointing read. I read the first 2 to lead up to this book, and I think that's what makes it even more disappointing because I had so much anticipation and enjoyment for the first 2. And then this one, it's like the author took all of the things that she'd set up in books 1 and 2, shook them all around, threw them on the floor, and went, hey, that's going to be book 3. And everyone's like, well, that's a mess though. And she's like, no, it's my book 3. It was awful. Don't do it. I've got a bit of a similar opinion for the next one, and that is Fragile Threads of Power by Victoria Schwab. And after reading this book, I know that I'm 100% done with any Shades of Magic book or Threads of Power book that she comes out with in the future. It is not the series for me. I hate Lila Bard. She was so annoying. When I first read the series, the Shades of Magic series, I really liked her because I found her edgy. But in the reread I did, and then in Fragile Threads, she was just so annoying, and she would actually sabotage or undermine what people were trying to do because she would just do things that she wanted to do, and it was just so tiresome, so frustrating. And I was hoping that Fragile Threads would introduce some new blood and new characters so that we wouldn't have to deal with her anymore, but that did not happen. So I'm not continuing. I'm done. I'm finished. It's over for me. My second last 2-star book was unfortunately a female-female romance from an author that I've really enjoyed in the past, and that is Ashley Herring Blake, and she wrote Make the Season Bright. And I was hoping for a nice, fun, Christmassy romance, but I ended up reading and finishing this book and going, these characters are awful for each other. They've got no emotional maturity or understanding of each other. They actively avoided more than once conversations that would have resolved things. They avoided it every time and only discussed stuff at the very, very end when I was like, I'm done with these guys. Like, I don't want them together at all. They're so unhealthy. So I gave that a 2 stars and was frustrated when I finished it. And then the last 2-star book, I don't know why I finished this one either. I guess because it was really short, was Convenience Store Woman. And this is the only literary fiction I think I've read in literally years. And I don't usually reach for that category or that genre for a good reason. Usually the themes overtake the story for me. And it very much did. It felt like the character was displaced. She had so much promise at the beginning of the story, and then she was dating this creepy guy who was literally a stalker and just a deadbeat, and so she was having to support him and herself. And I was like, why would you write this? This is so unnecessary. She can get her character arc and her journey and her meaning of life without dating a creepy weird guy. So I was like, I don't like this at all, actually. I'm done. I'm finished. It was a 4-hour audiobook. I smashed through it, and then I sat there and reflected and went, why did I do that to myself? Then we've got a bunch of 3-star books. So these are my lower end 3-star. And the first one is Fate of the Argosy by Sebastian de Castell. Again, a 3rd book in a series where I liked the first 2, and the 3rd one was just not good. It just let me down completely. Court of Wanderers was the next in that list, so a low 3 stars when I was absolutely obsessed with Silver Under Nightfall, the first book. So even though I did enjoy this and I did give it 3 stars, it just felt like it undercut a lot of what it had built and a lot of my expectations, and it felt a bit rushed as well. So that was disappointing. Maybe I've unfairly ranked that below the next 1 or 2 books actually, so I might move that up too. But the next one I've got is another Sebastian de Castell book, Play of Shadows, and I love the Greatcoat series, which is a quartet that he wrote, which is another fantasy series that has 3 Musketeers vibes and a lot of banter and great world building as the series kicks off. But then Play of Shadows is almost like a continuation, but not of the series. It does have some crossover characters, but it just felt like it was repeating a lot throughout the story, and it felt like it wasn't really going anywhere. It was very much contained, but not in a good way. So that was ultimately disappointing to me, especially when I really like the audiobook narrator, but it just wasn't enough to save it. And then also The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson, which is the 4th book in his Kickstarter series. And unfortunately, I've not enjoyed any of the Kickstarter books. I've got a Sanderson playlist, so I'll link that below. It's got a whole bunch of reviews in there for all of the Kickstarter books when I explain why I don't like them very much, which is disappointing because Stormlight is one of my favorite series by him, but he just really missed with the Kickstarter releases. After reading those, I thought I need some kind of cozy fantasy to boost my mood, and Unfortunately, it didn't do as much of a boost as I was hoping. So I've got the House Witch books 2 and 3, and I gave the first one in the series 4 stars, but I think progressively they just got a bit worse for me. And I wanted to give the last book in the series a 2, but it was just like a very bland 3, if that makes sense. So unfortunately, this series was not as hyped up as I was hoping it would be. It just really peaked with book 1 and I should have stopped there. The Order of Masks is another one. So I got that one from a publisher and it was pitched as romantasy, but it was only pitched as romantasy because that is hyped and popular right now. It was not a romantasy at all. It was a fantasy about these 2 female characters who were trying to opt for power. And they were related. Like, why pitch it as 2 female leads, say it's romantasy, and then go, hey, they're related, but they've got separate romances with these guys. It just felt disingenuous to me. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is good, but it's not me that is the target audience. Then I've got Mislaid Parts Half Known, which is the 9th book in the Wayward Children series by Seanan Maguire. And this series is really on the rocks for me. This was an underwhelming book. It has a dinosaur on the cover, and then it barely had dinosaurs in it. It was completely diluted by all of the characters in the story, and it just felt unnecessary. Like, why would you include that in your series? I also read Late Bloomer, and I was hoping this was going to be a fun, cutesy female-female romance. And again, it just felt like it was rushed. So it wasn't bad, but it was just too quick, and the characters didn't have time to build a dynamic and build chemistry. It felt like they were immediately together, and then the conflict happened, and then it was done. And I was like, oh, where is all the time spent together? Like, I want them being cute, and I didn't really get a lot of that development. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches is a cozy fantasy that I tried because it's so popular, and unfortunately it didn't hit like a 4 stars or a 5 stars for me. I was really hoping that it would, but there was something in the plot that was quite jarring to me personally, and it didn't feel like it very much fit with the story and the characters, like all of the characters. It really didn't feel like it fit. So that was unfortunate. I will try something else by her. I've mentioned something actually in my anticipated releases video that is coming out in March 2025. So I will try something else by this author, but this one just didn't quite hit the way that I wanted it to. Now, I love Leigh Bardugo's Ninth House and Hellbent books, and I'm really hoping that soon we get a 3rd book in that series because I am dying for it. But she released The Familiar, which is almost a dark academia book, but it's like a dark historical fantasy story, and it's about Lucia, and she's got magic and she is presented to the king, and there's a whole bunch of politics. And I was reading it going, I don't honestly think that I'm the target audience. Like, this isn't necessarily a bad book, and I like what the characters are doing and how they're intermingling, but it just felt like it wasn't for me. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. I was like, yeah, okay, next. Foundry Side was another one that I just felt was subpar, and I love City of Stairs, which I've given 5 stars and I'm obsessed with, but then continuing the rest of that series was a fail because I didn't like it, and then reading this was a 3 stars, and then The Tainted Cup was also a 3 stars, and I felt disillusioned by this in the same way that I felt disillusioned by The Tainted Cup. It just felt like it was a lot of build up to not a lot of tension and action, and it's like things kept fizzling, and I wanted there to be a bit more of a spike. So that's why I just put it as a 3. Like, it was fine. It's funny that I mentioned The Tainted Cup in tandem with Foundry Side because I had it next on my list. So basically The Tainted Cup started great. It like peaked at the start, and then it kind of not tanked, but it very much settled for the rest of the book. And it was supposed to be this like fast-paced mystery. Who is the killer, or who is the killers? What is going on? What is this character needing to solve? Like, is he in danger? And I just didn't care that much. It had little emotional investment for me. Same with Foundry Side. So maybe that's why I just didn't love them as much as I hoped I would. I tried 5 Broken Blades, which is technically it's a romantasy, I guess. There are romances between a lot of the key characters, but there's like 5 or 6 characters that are going on this secret heist that is actually a treasonous act against the king, because I think they're trying to kill the king, and it includes the prince that was previously exiled and a bunch of other assassins and magic wielders and that kind of thing. And, you know, it was fine. Like, it was enjoyable enough to finish, but I don't see myself continuing, so I'm just going to leave it there. Well Met is one that I read. There's just a joyful romantic story set at a Renaissance fair, and it was sweet when I read it. I enjoyed my experience of it, but when I looked at it on my list, I was like, wait, what book is that again? Like, I could not remember. So it wasn't particularly memorable. It didn't stick out to me, but while I was reading it, I had a good time. Sword Heart is another one that's very popular, but I found that I wanted a bit more in terms of answers from it. And I think if I'd known that it was technically a standalone, but still linked to an overarching set of books that probably have more answers about the particular world building thing that I was interested in, I think I would have enjoyed it more, but I just read it for the romance. I enjoyed the banter of the characters. I enjoyed their more serious and quiet moments as well. So it was an enjoyable character story, but I don't foresee myself going back and reading all of the other books that support it because I just don't have the interest that I feel like I should. Then I've got Can't Spell Treason Without Tea, and I went on a bit of a cozy fantasy kick, and this was enjoyable. The publisher sent it to me, and it's just about two characters. Both of them run away from their responsibilities, like their major responsibilities. One is a huge important mage, and the other is basically like the left-hand bodyguard to the queen. So they fall in love, they're courting for years, and they finally go, I don't want my responsibilities anymore. They run away and they start a little cozy tea shop. And it's about them establishing themselves in this small town and all of the characters that are coming out to support them and intermingle with them. And I just really liked it. It was really cute, but it wasn't one that I was, head over heels obsessed with. It was coasting and it was enjoyable. The Gods Below is another one that I had high hopes for, but it just didn't quite work out for me in the way that I wanted it to. Like, my expectations were quite high and it just came in the middle, like still a high 3 stars. And The Gods Below just follows, I think, two sisters. At the beginning of the book, they're swearing to stay together, but of course they get separated. One gets changed by the magical mist in this world, and then the other feels guilty that she left her sister behind. And it's about them trying to get back together over, I think, a 10-year period. They're apart and they're trying to get back together again. And it's got a lot of magic involved. There is a whole gems system and ingesting things in order to make yourself like a cool magic user. And so I found the magic system pretty cool. I found the intent of the characters pretty cool, but the emotions of it and the plot kind of fizzled for me. So while it was beginning and enjoyable, it kind of like lost its steam for me. I read Free Ren Volume 1, and this is a beautiful manga about this elf who goes on a quest and they defeat the Goblin King, and then they've come back and everyone's celebrating, and that's where it starts. So it starts after the huge quest has happened, and it's about Free Ren, who is a bit disassociated from reality because she doesn't really see time the way that everyone else does. And I just really like that concept of her being disconnected almost, and then realizing the importance of connections and people and intention, because she comes back to this city that was freed from the Goblin King after like 50 years, and all of the people that she traveled with, part of them were human, so they've aged in the time that she's come back. So she comes back, sees its meteor shower with them, and then again visits in the future, and she's coming back for one of their funerals. So she's like, time is really fleeting, and I need to go back and maybe relive the quest that we went on all of those years ago, and re-experience and rekindle those memories and actually connect with them in a way that I didn't before. So this manga really conveyed that, but I then went from the manga to watching the anime because it felt like there was going to be a lot more of a lift to the anime, like the color, the music, the voice acting, whereas this, it felt not flat, but it just felt like it was missing something. So I'm really happy that I read this because it made me find one of my favorite animes of all time. And then I almost forgot that I read this, and that is The Final Strife. And this was a complex fantasy that was on the cusp of young adult, but still like high young adult, almost crossing over into adult. I found that it was written very well and the characters were really believable and understandable, and I just have a lot of respect for it. So that's why it's highest on my 3-star list. Now we're getting into my 4-star reads. So my low 4-star would be The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. After adoring Red, White and Royal Blue, I had such high expectations for this and it fell under them. So that's why I'm putting it at the lower end of 4 stars. I read a ridiculous short-lived romance series and it's about dinosaur shapeshifters, which is just completely ridiculous. So Sink or Swim, which is the sequel, and then Smash and Grab, which is the first book, but I liked the first book more than the sequel. I'm probably going to continue if I feel the mood for it because they're just fun, uplifting, fast-paced books, and I find them ridiculous but endearing. They've all been male-male romances so far as well. Icebreaker was a fun one too. I feel like I need characters who are older than college age, so while it was enjoyable and I got through it pretty quickly, I don't know if I necessarily want to read a bunch of other books by the same author or even the sequel. Like, I'm good, I've done my time. Stariel was a great book for world building and character, and it felt like a cozy romance that included fae, and usually I hate fae. I don't know what it is, I just don't like it. My brain has an automatic block in it that filters out liking fae stuff. But with Stariel, I liked it, and I really respected the main female character. I think that's what it was. She was intense and complex, but also loving and caring, and I really liked seeing her portrayed. So that's why this is a 4 stars for me. I read a really enjoyable witchy series at the end of 2024 to kind of like motivate myself and get my reading done and get things added to my Goodreads. And it was Witches Get Stuff Done, Big Witch Energy, and Never Been Witched. That was a series, and I just smashed through all of them, and all of them were 4 stars. They could have been 3 depending on when I read them, but I was in the perfect mood and mindset for them, so I ended up really liking them all. Binti is one that I've been eyeing off for a while, and I thought, I just need to jump in and give it a try. And it's a bit of a weird sci-fi, but I think I liked it. I liked it enough that I might continue. I don't want to go out and purchase all of them because they're so short that it doesn't feel like it's worth it. But it was good, weird but good. Not for the Faint of Heart was another great one, and this is a Robin Hood adjacent retelling. It's not Robin Hood, it's like the daughter of Robin Hood who's going on her own kind of quest thing, and she kidnaps someone at the beginning of this book named Clem, and Clem is our main character, and Clem is like a motor mouth, and the daughter of Robin Hood, or the granddaughter of Robin Hood, she is just not a motor mouth at all. She is like grumpy, so it's a grumpy sunshine female romance, and this was surprisingly making me emotional at the end, so I found that I had a lot of respect for it, and I really like Lex Crouch's stories. Similarly, The Wedding Forecast was also fun, and that was an aged up romance. So the main character is like 30 or 31. Her name's Anna. She's just out of a relationship that's quite serious, and her best friend is also getting married. So she's like, all of my close friends who are my age are getting married and having serious milestones like buying houses. And she's like, I've broken up with my partner and I've got a tiny apartment that I'm not living in anymore because I can't afford my rent. So I've moved back into the spare room of my best friend's house. And so she's like, my life is in a shambles. She's not really sure about her job that she doesn't really enjoy. And she meets this guy Mac at the wedding because they are part of the bridal party, and they really hit it off. And I really like their romance. I think it was really sweet, but I also feel like it had such a great foundation of the main character finding who she is. And I really like that expression of her identity, which is why this was like a higher 4 stars for me. It was funny, it was sweet, it was emotional, and I just really enjoyed it. Lore Olympus Volume 6 really brought back my like and enjoyment of the series, because Volume 5, when it was ending, I was like, this is a tangent, it feels like. It doesn't feel like this story is doing itself justice. So I was ready to give up on the series, but I'm really glad that I read Volume 6 because I enjoyed it, and it felt like it ended at a point that was a great conclusion. But also, I know it's not the end of the series, but it felt like a great like summary of what I needed to know that the series is worth continuing in the future. Now we're getting into my higher 4 stars. So The Phoenix Keeper is way up there, and that is a cozy fantasy as well, set at a magical zoo, and it was just so sweet and I really enjoyed it. Again, it had a great discussion of the main character Ayla's anxiety, and it was really focused on her journey of figuring out how to reinvigorate the breeding program for the phoenixes. And also she's got a rival in the Griffin Keeper, and it's like a female romance. So I really enjoyed that, and just the message of conservation was so beautiful too. This Delicious Death was a ridiculous story, but it was so good because it was about 4 college students and they were going off to this music festival, but all of them were called Hollow Ones, or like essentially ghouls or zombies, because there was this huge apocalypse years ago. Now they eat sin flesh, so synthetic flesh, and that means they can reassimilate into society. But obviously there's a lot of parameters to doing that, and sometimes if they smell blood or if they come across something, they can just switch into ghoul mode without much control over it. So when one of these guys turns up dead, this group of girls is like, hang on, this wasn't us, like what is going on? And there's a whole conspiracy. So I just really like the friendships and the romance and the mystery. It all came together so well, and I had such a great time with it. Then of course Rick Riordan released Wrath of the Triple Goddess, and I just really love the Percy Jackson series, and this was a great homage to Percy Jackson because it really incorporated older readers with a lot of references. But at the same time, if you're a new reader, like you're starting with this series, it feels like it did enough new things and also established characters very well that you weren't really left in the lurch. So I have a lot of respect for it, and I also just really enjoyed myself. Like, it was a fun time. And then the last book that's a 4-star read before I get into my 5s is The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons, and this is a standalone dragon fantasy heist book that I had so much fun with, and it's by an author that I really like, and I hope that she brings out more books soon. I need more books, Jen Lyons. I actually lied. I do have one more 4-star book left, and it was almost like on the cusp of a 5 stars because I felt like I couldn't quite bring myself to give it 5 stars. I don't know if you can hear the birds outside, but apparently they've landed on the fence and they've decided now is the perfect time to feed all its babies. Anyway, I think the birds are done now. The book that I've given 4 stars, like my last 4-star, is Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. I have a spoiler review for it, so if you want to know all of my in-depth thoughts about book 5 in the series, you can go and check that out. It was a bit of a disappointment to my expectations. It felt like parts of it could have been edited down, and sometimes with authors that are really popular and have been releasing books for a long time as well, They've got a little bit of power to go, I want to do what I want to do, and it feels like it really just could have been edited more. I'm going to get off my pedestal about ranting about Wind and Truth because I genuinely did enjoy a lot about this book, but I feel like it was just too long. It was too long. As we climb further up my 5-star list, I've then got Heart Song by TJ Klune, which was a release in his Wolfsong series, and I'm obsessed with that series, and this came out in February of 2024, so I really peaked early with this book, giving it 5 stars. Then I was pleasantly surprised by The Spell Shop, and this is just a beautiful, cozy fantasy story, and it had a decent amount of plot and a decent amount of development and tension in the story for me to go, yeah, this isn't just a cozy fantasy that's, you know, kind of in its own world. It actually had connections to things and yeah, tension, like I said, and it was just such a good time. And I just love the main character's journeys. She's so delightfully wholesome and awkward, and I just loved her trying to re-assimilate into society on this small island. It was so cute. And then lastly, my 2 favorite books, so my 2 5-stars of 2024. So one of them is the first in a series, one of them is the last in a series. It's really hard to compare those two. So the first in a series, the second favorite book I had in 2024 is The Will of the Many by James Islington, because this fantasy book is just so good, and I can't believe it took me until like August to pick this up. Like, why did I wait so long? I should have read it the first book of the year because it was just so epic, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out in 2025. I think it's in September now rather than May, so I've got longer to wait, but I'll do it because I love this book so much. And then that last book in a series I mentioned, my favorite book of 2024, it made me an absolute crying mess, was Brother Song by TJ Klune, the final book in the Wolfsong series. I was sobbing for this book. I love the characters so much. It was such a great conclusion to a series with characters that I know and love, and oh, it was just epic. So was The Will of the Many. Also epic in different ways. But those are all of the books that I read, that I ranked, that I loved and I didn't love very much. So thank you so much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Again, thank you for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down below in the comments, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye.